All right, well, we're going to get started, and if more people join in, that's great. Thank you all for being here. Really excited for this lunch and learn about engaging volunteers in seed production. So, for today, I'm going to start with some introductions of our speakers. Wild Seed Project will start, then we'll move to Reseeding Rhode Island, and then Wild Woods Restoration Project, and then we'll have a good portion of the call for question and answer. So very, very grateful for our speakers today who are all engaging volunteers in seed production, seed collection, growing out of native plants, even um, planting those native plants and restoring habitats. We have Maura Sanchi, who is a seed stewardship coordinator and volunteer coordinator from the Wild Seed Project in Maine, also part of the Northern Appalachian Acadian Maritime Hub. She's joined by Caitlin Marshall, the community education manager, also from the Wild Seed Project. Then we have Sue Theriault, vice president of the Rhode Island Wild Plant Society, and also one of the leaders of the Reseeding Rhode Island Hub, also a member of the Northeast Seed Network Steering Committee. And we have Linda Rohleder, founder and president of Wild Woods Restoration Project, also part of the Local 59 partnership, and also one of the inaugural steering committee members of the Northeast Seed Network. So thank you again to our wonderful speakers. I'm so excited to hear more about your programs. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Caitlin and Maura to tell us about what they're working on in Maine.
Great. Thanks, Eve. So I figured I'd start with a little historical overview. I think it's important to include that whenever we talk about the volunteers at Wild Sea Project. So we're in our 12th year operating as Wild Sea Project, which is really exciting. And it's changed a lot since then. So back in 2014, when we started, none of us who are currently here were even a part of it. So Heather McCargo, our founder, um, created Wild Sea Project basically reliant on the dedication of volunteers. And even still, that looked very different. So that was people gathering in her kitchen, helping her with pretty much all aspects of the seed production, seed life cycle. If you go to the next slide, there's a photo of what that looked like. A very homegrown operation. Um, and this image is of people packaging seeds. So if you've ever bought seed packets from us, you'll know that they're in like our kind of classic red seed packets. And every seed packet we sell to this day still is packaged by volunteers. And so when Heather started, that was kind of a weekly thing. Um, and then in about 2020, we had a New York Times article that featured our work, and that really led to a big boom. And volunteers continued to be super important and help us keep up with that demand. And so with that, the volunteer opportunities kind of grew. And similarly, Heather was transitioning away. So as she stepped down as executive director, we kind of developed a slightly different volunteer program, but we still relied a lot on like the process she had established and the people and connections she'd made through volunteers in the past. So we pretty much follow a lot of the same principles that she created. We still have people coming and following, using the same tools and spoons and things for packaging our packets. Um, but because of that great process she established, people were really interested in it, and it's really engaging. It's kind of this like really innate human thing where we gather around a table and we're sharing stories while we work and talking about related topics and unrelated topics. So it's a really good community building opportunity as well. And so presently, the top ways, like the biggest ways that volunteers are involved is annually, year-round doing seed packing. We sell tens of thousands of packets, and they're all packed basically by volunteers. So that happens a couple times a week, almost year-round. And then once the weather warms up, they join us at the nursery to do some transplanting and up potting, things like that. And so those are kind of the key ways that volunteers have been engaged historically. And we've got new people coming in year round for that kind of thing. The other really critical way that volunteers have been involved is through seed collection. So we have lots of volunteers, and most of them are from the very beginning back in 2014, just kind of Heather's group of people and connections she made who have plants growing in their garden, and we rely really heavily on them for collection. And that seed supply kind of is what fuels our seed sales and all of our seeds used for education and everything like that. But you can imagine doing that for 12 years can get kind of tough, especially as we've required more and more seeds. We've had a greater demand. And it's just not something that kind of for core people can keep up with. And that's where Caitlin's become a really big help in trying to just kind of reestablish and build basically an education component around filling that gap to create like a standardized system by which we can have new volunteers trained to do that kind of work. So if you want to talk a bit about that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so that's a really fun project that we're piloting this year. Oh yeah, so this is down at the nursery, our Native Seed Center. Transplanting is another key piece. So just that volunteers are really getting to participate in the whole plant life cycle, which means we get help throughout the plant life cycle, and is also like, I mean, I find it pretty rewarding when I get to be hands-on throughout. And we found that's true with volunteers too. They really love, yeah, getting to take care of these little creatures all the way through. Yeah, and that's weekly on Wednesdays. We have volunteers, and then sometimes also more. Yeah, we should, oh, maybe while we're on this, we should just briefly talk about the plant sale too.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So we sell seeds throughout the year. We sell plants once a year at a big plant sale in the fall. So that's another sort of like one-time big engagement for volunteers. So we have some folks who are like our weekly seed packers, and then other folks we really only see at the plant sale. And it's like a weekend commitment. It's something that they maybe like come from a neighboring town to come do. So yeah, that's just another way people get plugged in. So the seed collection, I didn't put any pictures on there because it's brand new. Expanding it is brand new. So we're running a pilot program with some instructors pulled from this Northeast Seed Network. So we're super grateful for folks who are coming to share their expertise. And the hope is that we do a lot of learning together about the process this year so that in subsequent years, it'll be something that we can develop into something for the wider network. But this year we've got a crew of about 11 students, some wild seed staff and some outside volunteers. Great mix of some land managers, a native plant nursery owner, and then a lot of just plant enthusiast volunteers we've already been working with. And we're going to meet once a month or so to do some kind of deep dives into kind of background and ethics. We're going to talk about protocols and permission slips and laws. We're going to do some botany for plant ID, and then we're going to get out in the field and do plant ID in the field and collection in the field. So that's really exciting, but also very much a pilot. So it's like a pretty small and something that, you know, we hope to open up more widely in the future, but that's how it looks this year.
And yeah. I think maybe the last thing to note is just that, so we have a really robust and dedicated education program that is like its own entire entity, and
yes,
still
outside of that.
Yeah. Right. And still, I think a lot of people are drawn to the volunteer opportunities we have because they're also really great, like you said, hands-on learning or opportunities to learn. And that's both in like plant care. We get a lot of insight from our volunteers about what kind of gaps we have in our education. So for example, we really relied heavily on teaching people about seed sowing every winter and then bringing people on to work with us in the summer about transplanting. We realized that people were actually joining because they didn't know what the next steps were after seed sowing. So that led us to design a whole transplanting workshop. So just, and same with the collection. We've heard from lots of people that that's something they're interested in. And so it's kind of a win-win where we get to have more people who we can kind of ask to supplement our collections. But also it seems really beneficial for them as well. At least that's what we've heard so far. But yeah, I think it's just really, it feels very reciprocal. Sometimes it feels like it's not balanced. It feels like they're doing so much for us, and that is absolutely true. And like our operation relies 100% on the dedication of all of our volunteers.
Yeah.
But it's always really refreshing to hear that like this is actually a really good learning opportunity for them as well. And I think that that keeps people coming back because there's always something more to be learned, and it's nice to learn from them as well. So yeah, lots of learning opportunities with our volunteers.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I think that's it.
I think that's it.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Caitlin and Maura. That was so great to hear about what's happening up in Maine. I knew a little bit, but not as much as, you're engaging volunteers in so many different respects. So wonderful, wonderful work. Okay, now I'm going to hand it over to Sue to tell us about what's happening in Rhode Island.
Okay, thank you, Eve, and thank you, Wild Seed Project. You truly are amazing educators, and we've learned a lot from you. So the Rhode Island Wild Plant Society has been around since 1987. The mission is to preserve and protect Rhode Island's native plants and their habitats. It is an all-volunteer organization except for a very part-time office person. So volunteers are critical to us. I will focus on our seed starter operations and reseeding Rhode Island, since the topic today is seed production, but we have volunteers in many other areas, for example, walks and workshops, our publications, our website, but today I will focus on seed. And so if I say RIPS, that's just our acronym, Rhode Island Wild Plant Society. All right, so let's start with our seed starters locations. Next, thanks, Eve. So by 1991, RIPS had started its first seed starter location in Portsmouth. So this group has always had a long history of protecting and preserving our native plants by actually growing them. And I think if we're talking about volunteer engagement, I think one important way that we are engaging people at these seed starters locations is we do have regular work days and regular times, so people can build that into their schedules. I think also having a regular and physical meeting location is important as well. And so RIPS currently has 2 locations, one in Portsmouth on the East Bay, and then also on the West Bay in South Kingstown. That location is being built out right now, but it had a long time home in Exeter. And I think understanding the motivation of volunteers is really important. Some people want to get together to be with like-minded plant enthusiasts. They want to socialize. Others are really eager to learn. I think strong bonds develop between people as you work towards a common goal. And the common goal for both of these groups is like producing beautiful plants for our May and our September plant sales. And watching the group seed, grow, and then bring these plants to the sales, it's kind of like almost like sending a child off to kindergarten. Like there's ownership and love there, and also a lot of knowledge that's imparted at these sales. And so it really was, if we go to the next slide, it really was a desire to fuel these seed starter operations with source identified seed that was as close to our wild populations as possible. Like some people say, why don't you guys change your name to the Rhode Island Native Plant Society? We get that a lot, but we want to keep the wild in our name because we want people to remember that like native plants originate in the wild. And so reseeding is a way to really keep the wild in the seed that we're growing at these operations. And so, let's see. With reseeding, we we do contract with a botanist, so a professional botanist who goes out into the wild and identifies the seed and collects it. So this is not a part of this program that we're using volunteers for. We think seed identification is really tricky. There's important protocols to be followed. And we thought that for the integrity of our program, we wanted that professional aspect to it. The other piece of reseeding that we're contracting out is on the growing of the wild seed into really hardy plugs that are then planted at organic farms and land trusts in groups of 200. So what we're doing is taking the wild seed and creating what we call foundation plots or seed increased beds out of that seed. And so once the plug has left our grower, now it's totally in the hands of the volunteers. So next slide. So we wanted to get foundation plots all around Rhode Island. And so this is our current map. Managing this with an all volunteer force has been a learning experience. But one important thing that we implemented last year was a volunteer site leader. So we have leaders at each site, and their job is to have a relationship with the landowner and also to monitor the seeds for ripening. And then when the seeds are ready to be picked, that volunteer leader has a volunteer team that gets called in to do the actual harvesting. Now, with our seed starters operations, we're finding that a lot of the volunteers are coming out of those operations, but a challenge can be that we do have the regular work schedule at seed starters, but when it comes to seed collection, that can be a more spontaneous endeavor. But it seems to be working out. And the other piece that has been really helpful is our volunteers are all up on Google Docs, and whatever activity is happening at these different sites is being recorded. So I can just hop on to the spreadsheets and I can see like what collections are happening, the timing of it, like whether anybody needs help. And so managing this, Rhode Island is a small state, but it feels kind of big sometimes with all of these plots everywhere. All right, good. So let's try the next slide. So the seed that we're collecting, like I said, is being grown out at our seed starters operations, and it has added this element of richness to the seed starters because people now have, maybe they've been out into the plots to collect the seed, they're bringing it in. There's a lot of hand cleaning that's going on for the seeds that the seed starters are using. And I think, like Maura pointed out, it can kind of feel a little bit like a quilting bee as you're sitting around doing the cleaning. Some people either like really love the cleaning or really don't want to do it. You know, it's so different personalities, different desires, but actually extracting the seed from the seed head, it's just been like such a learning experience looking at all the different types of seed and having a knowledgeable volunteer base is so important because these are the people who then go out when we have workshops or and they're sort of the native plant warriors, we call them, who go out and spread the good word and spread the knowledge. All right, next slide. So our two seed starters operations are basically just unpowered hoop houses with seasonal water. But when it comes time for the actual seeding, which always happens in the winter, we do have a couple places in Rhode Island that allow us to use their warm spaces from like January to maybe mid-February. And then these seeded trays get moved into those cold, basically the cold frames that I showed you pictures of earlier. All right, the next slide. So the other piece that is, I would say, enriching the experience in our volunteers is that we do have, with our two leased properties, this one in Portsmouth and the other in South Kingstown, we now have some space for the foundation plots to have a few. Because what can happen is with a fall plant sale or with a winter seeding, and then if the plants get moved out to the fall plant sale, sometimes volunteers are never seeing them flower. So because they're getting moved out so young, but with being able to work with these foundation plots, they're working with mature plants that are flowering. And it's just, again, it's just making them more excited, more knowledgeable, and just making it so much of a richer experience. So maybe the last slide. Let's see if I missed anything. We can't underestimate the power of the mission itself. So people are drawn to the Wild Plant Society because of their deep belief in the power of native plants. Like understanding what motivates your volunteers so that you can make sure they're having a satisfying experience keeps them with you. I can't overemphasize having a regular meeting time in place. And like with some of the volunteers, it's almost like if we don't meet at that time or day, they're like disappointed. So it's like people get into a routine and they want to participate. Again, the ooh, thanks for the laugh. But again, seed collecting itself and its spontaneity. Luckily, we have that core seed starter group that we can pull from because if you're just doing seed production, just the spontaneity factor might be a challenge. Let's try the next slide. Yeah, so I've kind of mentioned it, connecting the growing of the plants with the seed production is really a wonderful thing. And lastly, you have to foster leaders and you have to give them support and so that they can, because not everything can be centralized. So like fostering leaders who are willing to do things outside of the regular meetings is also really important. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sue. That was so insightful. Okay, I'm going to turn it over now to Linda.
Hey, Eve, you can skip to the next slide. So Wildwoods Restoration Project is a volunteer project. We are all volunteers. I'm a volunteer. We do have a seasonal employee that helps us with lead events and run our main growing site. But we were formed 4 years ago, and this month is our 4th birthday. So we're celebrating this month. But our purpose is to restore the health and diversity of our forest. So we're focused on forest understory right now, and we are focused on local ecotype. We work primarily in the Hudson Valley, but also in northern New Jersey. And this area is very complex in terms of ecoregions. We have 4 ecoregions that run vertically through the area. And so we are trying to keep the ecotypes in their own region, which means that we're handling multiple different ecoregions at the same time. And we also has part of our mission to inspire a passion for continued stewardship. Next slide. So what we do is we partner with parks to support restoration projects. And we take on projects that we think we have capacity to do. The parks get their plants for free. And our volunteers are growing for this purpose. This is the title of this talk is Producing Seed. That's sort of a side part of what we do. So our whole purpose is to do restoration projects in the parks. Now, that's our official partners. We also do sell plants at a reduced cost to other parks and preserves. And we do have a May and a September plant sale to clear out excess plants that we don't have room for. So next slide. So I mentioned we're all volunteers, so we train volunteers to be part of the entire process. We collect and sow seeds. We make sure we get permission from the landowner. The collectors have to go through training, or they go out with someone that has been trained. We get together to do seed cleaning and seed sowing. Next slide. And the way we've arranged our program is we bring the supplies to the park partners location. So their local volunteers can get involved. And once we have seedlings that are ready to pot up, that's usually late May to early July, we hold a bunch of events at our different park partners locations. We bring the soil, the pots, the seedlings, and the volunteers get together and sit. And someone mentioned quilting bee. That's always been in my head too. Quilting bee for plant nerds. Sit there and pot up seedlings and chat. And we also have a main growing location, which is basically just at my house, that we have regular work days at. Sue mentioned regular days. We do have some volunteers that come every Thursday morning or whatever that happens to be. So we can develop a little bit of community there too. So once they potted up the seedlings, because we have no real facility, we need these to go somewhere. And so we've developed a distributed model. Volunteers take them home. So we have flats of pots of recently potted seedlings that go home with volunteers. Last year, we had 52 volunteers that did this, and we were able to grow over 30,000 plants with basically only having less than 1/10 of an acre of land to grow on. That was the distributed model allowed to do that. And what we discovered by doing this, it was not in our intention, but what we discovered is the volunteers got very invested in their seedlings. They cared about those seedlings. Their success with the seedlings was better than mine because they were watching 32 plants and making sure every single one got water and light, and they would switch them around when they needed. So they got very invested in it. And that really went a long way to inspire that sense of stewardship because they wanted to see those plants succeed in their restoration planting. Next slide. So volunteers that are growing the plants, they take them home from June till early September, and they earn free plants for doing this. If they're taking care of plants, they should earn some of it back. So we do a 20% credit of what you successfully grew. And they can use that credit to shop from among our sale plants. And so they can get what they grew, or they can get something that's more appropriate to their own yard. And we have volunteers that are experienced master gardeners that, handle 20, 30 flats. We have volunteers that are first timers that are taking care of plants for the first time. And our general success rate is very high, which is, that's something very surprising and pleasing. Next slide. So then we get together to plant our plants in local parks and preserves. We have volunteer work days from September through October. Anybody can participate. We're planting small plants, so it's fairly easy to do. And this past year, we put over 7,000 plants in the ground in restoration projects. and had over 100 people involved in planting. And so, I think in general, we're very successful with that. We've also inspired our park partners to do more. They are taking on more invasives removal and putting up deer exclosures to protect more area than they had originally intended to. They're getting very excited about it, and we're not aggressively driving this, but they're just seeing, hey, I got all this planted up. Let's do more. So I think it's really inspiring them as well. Next slide. We also do plant rescues. This isn't a big major focus of what we do, but we want to preserve our local native ecotypes. And so when we hear about a spot that is going to be impacted by development, we organize a plant rescue. And to date, we've led 10 plant rescues and rescued over 5,300 plants, including a rare population of sharp-tip blue-eyed grass and a population of lady's tresses orchids. And both of those are surviving and thriving, and were not bulldozed because we were able to rescue them. A lot of other species as well. It's been very gratifying in that respect. Many of our plants go back into restoration projects in the local parks. And we try to definitely make sure to do that. Okay. All right, next slide. So we are starting an effort to have volunteers have founder plots or foundation plots, also known as seed increase plots, on their own properties. And since we work primarily with forest understory, we are treating our foundation plots really as native populations, a restoration population that is just protected and cared for. And so this is one of our volunteers that, he has a large plot there. It doesn't really show in the photo, but he's got over 100 plants of 2 species. And this is in his home landscape. And it's designed as another planting bed in his landscape. But we also do plantings in the forest. And we also use our park partners' restoration sites as foundation or founder plots. We're just beginning this program, and we're trying to put plants in the same ecoregion that they belong in for founder plots. So we are growing plants for specific ecoregions that can go out to these foundation plot sites, but we have to have enough extra seed and extra plants in order to be able to do that. And we're still needing to build up our seed supply so that we have extra plants that we can. It's sort of like a catch-22 situation. And so we're working into it fairly slowly, but we have several trays of plants that we need to find homes for ecoregion 58 and ecoregion 59. We are still working on 64. And we're just beginning with 67, so our 4 ecoregions. Next slide. We do often have excess seed that we produce that we realize, hey, we're not going to use all this seed, and we want to make sure that it gets out there and we don't waste it. So this year we've started sending some of our excess seed to the Northeast Seed Collective. And it's for sale to the public. And that's a sample of some of our envelopes that they made up for us. So we're very happy about that. And that's a relationship that we're going to continue. We're not specifically growing seed for that purpose, but it's nice to have a place to send the excess seed, and it's not just sitting in the refrigerator going bad and getting old. So next slide. And this, I like to put this up, this whole effort started as this idea of like somebody should do something about that. Our understories are disappearing and somebody should do something about that. And then I realized, I am somebody, and this quote, really hit home. But I also love that this is an activity that any volunteer can participate in. We have our youngest volunteer was under 1 year old. He helped stack pots at a planting day after they were done. And our oldest volunteer is in her 80s. So it's a very inclusive feeling activity. Next. Okay, and that's it. My final slide. If anybody would like to get involved, if you're in the Hudson Valley or North Jersey, I would highly encourage you to sign up for our newsletter. We have a monthly newsletter, and you can find out all of our events and see our past newsletters on our website. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Linda. And I have to say, I was a volunteer at Wildwoods Restoration Project, and I absolutely loved the afternoon that I spent with you and can't wait to come back. And I also want to volunteer with you, Sue, and also at Wild Seed Project. So thank you all so much. That was wonderful to hear more about your programs. Now I'd like to open it up. We'd love to use this time, the next 15 minutes, to have a question and answer session. So please feel free to just jump in. If you have a burning question, you can also put it in the chat and I can read those off, or you can raise your hand. We have one comment from Sammy saying, "I'm so impressed. Thanks for this beautiful work." Okay, we have a question from Joan. How do you find volunteers? Linda?
One of the advantages of partnering with a park or a preserve is they already have a mailing list, so they can advertise the event to their mailing list. But we also, anytime I give a talk, I encourage people to sign up for our newsletter, and then they see our events, and we recruit people to attend the events through the newsletter. And so I give talks a lot. I go out. Me and also several of our board members and other experienced volunteers go out and table at events like Earth Day events. We have 3 Earth Day events we're going to be at, and we talk about the local projects that we're doing. We also try to get some press in like the little community newspapers so that local people can know there's this opportunity.
Thanks, Linda. Allie, have your hand raised?
Hi, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Hello from Florida. Yes, very far from where you all are, but we're trying to establish similar programs here in Florida. And so the work you guys are doing is really inspiring to see the success coming out of it. So I have a couple questions for Sue. And the first is, when you were doing your harvesting, was it mostly hand collection, or were you using mechanical equipment like combine harvesters and things like that?
Okay, so when we say harvesting, we're talking about from the foundation plots. So we're talking about picking from approximately 200 plants. It's all by hand. So volunteers have like clippers and a like a paper bag or a lawn and leaf bag. And it's a lot of clipping of the seed head, which goes into the bag. So I know when we think of harvesting, we think of the Midwest and like the big equipment. These plots are maybe like 200 square feet, 250 square feet. And so, so if you have like a nice size group of people, so they're socializing while they're doing it, because it can be time consuming and maybe a little boring. So again, there's that social piece where there's lots of conversation. The other thing to know about this is that the seed can ripen at different times. So when you're going in, you're not taking the whole thing. So knowing when it's ready, taking just what's ready, and then you'll be revisiting this plot a few times to finish the collection.
Yeah, absolutely. I know you said it was very spontaneous, and you had, I think you said, a scout or somebody that was checking in on the plot to identify when the seeds were ready.
Definitely. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, very good. And then I'm not sure if you mentioned this, but how do you decide how to distribute the foundation seed?
Okay, I'm so glad because I did not put that part in, but I'm glad that Linda did. So we keep some of the seed here in Rhode Island, and we use it for our seed starter groups or for anyone else who has contacted us who would like, a fresh batch of seed. But most of the seed that we're producing is heading up to a what's called the Northeast Seed Collective,
Mm-hmm.
which Linda mentioned that as well. And so that's run by a woman named Dina Brewster. And so I coordinate with her to give her what we call the raw seed. And then at her place, that seed is cleaned, tested, and packaged. So that's at the moment our main distribution. It's
Very good. Yes, the there's more seed collectives and networks and partnerships popping up that are covering a larger geographic region. So that's awesome. I was curious about that. And then for Linda, I know you've been answering some things in the chat. Are you willing to provide your training program that you require your collectors to take before being involved in a collection?
Yeah, so we have about an hour-long recorded webinar that we require the volunteers to watch and report back to me on after they've watched it. And then we have additional training that's required by our state parks. So if they're going to collect in a state park, they have to take a little bit of additional training. And so that is recorded, and I could share that link with you if you like.
I would love that. We're trying to we're currently in an agreement process with the U.S. Forest Service, and so we are looking at those issues of like liability and how to make sure that we do it sustainably and protect our landscape. So that would be awesome to see that. And I will stop asking questions. Again, this was really inspiring, and thank you for all that you guys are doing.
good luck, Allie.
Yeah, thank you for coming all the way from Florida to this webinar today. Anybody else have any questions?
I had a question. I'm not actually Betsy Morton. I'm her daughter, Heather Morton. And my question was, I assume you don't stay within state boundaries, you stay within ecosystems. So if someone in Massachusetts wanted to volunteer to do a seed increase plot, it would just depend what ecoregion they were in terms of getting involved. Sorry, that was an assumption, but it was implicitly a question. Like, do you have to be in Rhode Island to participate?
Uh, first of all, not Betsy, but Betsy's daughter, mother. Oh,
Yeah, it's
sorry.
a daughter.
Okay. So I live in Little Compton, Rhode Island, which is a border town with Massachusetts. So this whole, Massachusetts, Rhode Island thing, if you're looking to volunteer at RIPS, I mean, we have volunteers from Connecticut, Massachusetts. That's not a problem at all. In terms of foundation plot locations, we don't have any actual foundation plots in Massachusetts, but there are some groups that are based out of Massachusetts, like Native Plant Trust being one of them. So, I mean, this whole seed producing movement definitely crosses state lines. It's just RIPS itself does not have any foundation plots in Massachusetts. And so I hope that answers your question.
Yes, and I'd also just like to say a little bit about the Northeast Seed Network. So we are a connected partnership model or multiple hubs and spoke model. And so if you go to our website, the northeastseednetwork.org, you can get to our network directory map. You can also see a map of where the partnerships and hubs are, and you'll see that they don't really follow state boundaries, but they're more based around the ecoregions. So if you're coming from the Northeast or the Mid-Atlantic and you want to find a group to engage with, that's a really good first place to take a look. And if you have any questions about who you might want to get connected with, you can reach out to me and I'd be happy to direct you to the leaders of your partnership or hub based on your location. And Linwood Andrews, I see you have your hand raised. Oh, you're muted though.
There we go. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Here in Norwich, Vermont, we have an extreme deer browse problem, such that we have no understory in most of our forested areas. And I'm curious how you make decisions about what plants, as particularly those in the understory, to try and grow out, and how you handle the problem of them getting planted out and then immediately eaten to the ground by the deer. Do you require deer exclosures, or how do you handle that?
I think that probably heads to me, right?
Perhaps.
Yeah, we ask our park partners to have a plan for deer protection, and if they do not have deer fencing up yet, we focus on grasses, sedges, ferns. There's a few species we know that deer don't eat because we see them growing in areas where there's massive deer problems. And we try not to plant things that we know the deer are going to browse on until there is a deer exposure. And we do have a massive deer problem, especially in Westchester County, northern New Jersey areas, a little bit less so in some of our more northern part of our region, but still a problem. And most of our parks realize that once they put the deer exposure up, it's sort of got to be a permanent solution, that they're not really ever going to be able to take that down unless they want to see the plants, browsed and eaten to the ground again. And really our forests are in such bad shape that there's literally almost nothing in it other than, things the deer won't eat.
And do you plant one of the or two of the ferns that grow here that are actually native but problematic are hay-scented and New York fern, because they create these dense patches that nothing can grow up through and are actually a problem. So I'm curious whether you see that problem in the Hudson Valley, or what ferns do you focus on?
We primarily focus on Christmas fern and wood ferns, and because most of our areas are dry, we don't do like the New York fern or lady fern or sensitive fern. We would do those ferns if we had wetter areas to restore. But most of the restoration sites that we're working on right now are areas where beech trees are dying because of beech leaf disease, and so they're a little bit drier. And so those, the wood ferns and the Christmas fern are where we head for that.
And do you find volunteers are able to propagate and grow out those ferns?
Well, we teach them, we
Yeah.
work with them. And most of the propagation is done at our main growing site, and then the volunteers are just taking plants home to take care of.
I see.
But we do fern spore sowing classes and workshops, and we've done probably about 10 of those now. And so we teach that as well. We also teach doing divisions.
That's cool. Thank you.
Thank you, Linwood.
No other questions?
Well, maybe I would just hop in to echo too. It was really lovely to hear Linda and Sue both bring in the quilting bee analogy because that's one that we use so much as well. So it was, yeah, just sweet to see that echoed as like so core to the volunteer experience in all of these places is that it's a space for folks to come together while using their hands. Yeah, I think that's just a really sweet piece of it.
Mhm. Yeah, not only are we restoring plants, but we're restoring these bonds between people and in community.
Yeah.
Definitely very good for our health and our well-being.
Yeah. And I was really inspired, Linda, by your going to partners and working with volunteers there, because we do think some about like, okay, what are some ways to engage with folks who don't already know us?
Right.
Yeah, but would also love to be in a plant nerd quilting bee.
Cole, you have your hand raised?
Yeah, hi, thanks. I just had a quick question. So I'm do pretty similar work and about to onboard a whole group of new volunteers. And I was curious what y'all's process to onboarding new folks are. I feel like specifically with this kind of work, it's a lot of different areas of expertise all coming together, so it can be a bit overwhelming at first. And I was wondering kind of what that looks like for y'all, and if you have like physical handouts or it's just training on the job, or how do you approach that?
Yeah, I can speak a little about that. Fortunately, the things we have people coming to do is very repetitive. So they're doing kind of one of two main tasks for the most part. That would be like seed packaging or like transplanting. And again, even though there are only two, there's lots of variety within that. So we kind of have it's mostly on the fly, but there's lots of repetition within it. So the process, depending on the species you're working with, kind of looks the same. And I think that that's really helpful. So there's like markers so you can know as a volunteer if there's like something you're missing or if you need to check in about it. And then we do have some very rudimentary, but like standard kind of protocols and things that are written on paper that people can kind of look at themselves and just revisit to make sure that they are able to be following like the minimal protocols we have for those things. But yeah, I think there are like some things that are easier than others. So we'll kind of stick with starting people out with like larger seeds or more established, hardier plants. And then if you eventually move them on to more challenging things, it's really good to like boost their confidence and like just reiterate that like they've done this before. They're not going to hurt anything. And like everyone who's grown a plant has killed a plant. So it's not the end of the world.
Yeah. And then the onboarding for the seed collection, it's a lot more. So that's why we're doing this like multi-month training with a cohort and really trying to give it some care so that folks can really be like some others were saying, like leaders and have the confidence to go do it on their own. So
Thank you. Okay. We have time for one more quick question. Kelly, I see you have your hand raised.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for your time today. This is really interesting. I work for a nursery that is an LLC, so we fall into a different category than, the organizations that you all are talking about. But, there is definitely a need, especially with woodies, for smaller nurseries to be able to access greater like variety of ecotypic seed. And I feel like because it's a for-profit business, engaging volunteers isn't necessarily appropriate in that environment. I'm wondering what anyone has to say, like a perspective, or if you're aware of any resources of, independent folks working to do this work in their own area and selling the seed at a reasonable price.
Kelly, what's your geographic area?
We are literally on the edge of 58 and 59. We're in the Hudson Valley, New York, like an hour southeast of Albany.
There are 3 professional seed collectors that work in this area that you could engage to collect seed for you.
Great. Would I be able to back channel with you, Linda, to get their
Yes.
info? Awesome.
Yes.
Thank you so
And
much.
Eve as well. She probably has her information too.
Great. Thank you both. And thanks for everyone's time today. This was really interesting.
Thank you, Kelly. Thanks for joining.
I just want to say something else to Kelly. You don't necessarily have to call people volunteers. You could run an educational event and teach people what to do and get their help doing it at the same time.
Mm. Yes, and Kelly, we Reseeding has an LLC that has 3 foundation plots and sounds very similar to what you're trying to do. And so I agree with Linda. Don't let your status interfere with looking for volunteers.
Great. Thank you.
Actually, you could probably charge. I'm just putting that out there.
That may be true. I think that one great thing about what, everyone was talking about today is the community vibe with all of this. And I think there is something that is so accessible, and kind of steps outside of capitalism a little bit. That's really inspiring about this work. So just trying to
And
keep
maybe
it
like Sue's model of those who, I think it was Sue, maybe I'm mixing all programs together, where you bring home the plants and care for them. And then that's like, sorry, that was Linda. To then be able to, have a credit anyway.
Well, thanks everyone. Thanks for joining. I just want to let you know we have a few more upcoming events, and you can check out our website at any time to see our events, see events of our partners, and register for those events. We're also working right now on a really exciting lineup of in-person, on-farm events across the region from West Virginia all the way up to Maine that will hopefully kick off in June and go until probably October or November. So please sign up for our mailing list because that's where you can find out about that, all of those new events coming up. And then we also post regularly on our Instagram. So if there's also an event that you're hosting or people in your network are hosting and you want us to promote it, please let us know. We can. Or if you have a topic that you really feel like you need to learn more about, let us know. The Northeast Seed Network, one of our mission is to help facilitate knowledge and know-how sharing across this community. That is the Northeast Seed Network, that is a regional alliance of seed partnerships and hubs. So we're really interested in helping to facilitate that horizontal knowledge sharing across members and partners. So please, take a look at our events. Also want to point out that on May 18th, we'll have our network-wide check-in meeting. And so that's a really great opportunity to come and hear what's happening across this really large region. We'll have lots of updates from all the partnerships and hubs. So thank you again for joining and wishing everybody a wonderful weekend.
Bye.
Thanks, Eve.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye, Sue. Thank you. That
Take
was
care,
great.
Eve.